Miami has been screwed by the college football playoff to start the playoff rankings. But can the Canes get back in the mix?
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
This crossover edition of Locked On the Portal and Locked On Canes. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst. Thank you for making Locked On the Portal and Locked On Canes a part of your day each and every day right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, where right now you can get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Go check it out at FanDuel.com. We're going to be talking about how Miami built their roster in part with the portal, part with recruiting. We're going to get to that later in the show. It's actually a pretty darn good roster, and it's one of the reasons I don't understand the 18th place in the rankings. Speaking of the rankings themselves, why was Miami placed so low? We're going to talk about their schedule, who they beat, who they didn't. That's going to be a big part of it. And I'm going to start off with concern about Carson Beck. He went from top of the board in the Heisman race to really struggling. What happened? How much does that impact the college football playoff rankings? All of that and more right now, and we're going to do it with our guy, Mr. Alex Donno, Locked On Canes. Nobody knows more about the Hurricanes than you, Alex. And let's start right there. Carson Beck, like you and I talked about when I went on your show, I don't know, a month or so ago. Beck's got a great chance to win the Heisman. We were both in agreement. We didn't really even expand on it.
Right.
And now, how do you explain this? Is it because not all of it's his fault, but how would you define it in general?
Well, I mean, it's clear. And, obviously I heard a ton of this from Georgia fans before he even set foot on campus at Miami. It's clear that there are inconsistencies with Carson Beck's game, that he is consistently inconsistent. And you mentioned a conversation we had about a month ago. This was like 4 games into the season, or I guess 5 games into the season, because he played very well against Florida State in the 5th game. He played well against Notre Dame. He played great against South Florida. Didn't play that great against Florida in a game that Miami won. But 5 games into the season, there was a time when he was the sportsbook favorite. Like if you went to the FanDuel odds, Carson Beck at that time in early to mid-September was actually the favorite, or actually closer to October even, was the favorite to win the Heisman Trophy. And the inconsistencies have set in. And like anything in football, Brian, it's like you can't put it all strictly on one player. Miami's offense has clearly gotten stale. There has not been evolution to the point where I think too much of what they're still running in November is what they were running in September. And I think the margins have gotten a lot thinner because of a lack of evolution. But yet from a Carson Beck point of view, since he had that 4 interception game against Louisville, like the consistency has really, really dropped. I mean, that a lot of that Louisville loss was on him. Miami was still down to a final possession and a chance to win the game, despite him having thrown 3 interceptions at that point. Then he throws the 4th interception to seal the game. Miami had an easy win the following week against Stanford, but a game where they didn't really have to throw the ball downfield a lot. Like it was a much more kind of conservative passing game plan to kind of get him back on track in that Stanford game, and it seemingly maybe did get him back on track. And then the SMU game, I don't put nearly as much, that loss, I don't put nearly as much on Beck as I did the Louisville game. I thought that was a lot more about, and he did throw an interception in overtime. That did happen. So he's not getting a pass by any stretch of the imagination. But the SMU loss to me was a lot more about Miami's self-destructive pre-snap penalties, a couple of really costly drops by his receivers, and Miami failing to succeed on the ground in short yardage situations, which is very unusual for this team, but they came up dry on short yardage. So I think that had a lot more to do than Carson Beck. But yeah, it's very clear, Brian, he's had very mixed success, I should say, throwing it down the field. Way too many interceptions so far this season. And understandably, like he's played himself out of the Heisman race. That's obviously not something that's going to happen for him this year. And, I still think he's someone that probably will get drafted into the NFL. But, about a month ago, you would have said, hey, maybe he's a 1st or 2nd round pick. That's, not going to be the case at this point.
Here are the games that he's played, his statistics against FBS winning teams. Percentage is pretty good, but there is one glaring weakness here. He's 94 on 131, 71.8%. That's really good.
Yeah, that's good.
1,090 yards, 8.3 yards per reception. We're good. 7 touchdowns. Okay. 8 picks. Like when he misses or the receivers aren't on the same page with him, it's catastrophic.
Now, half of those in one game, though, but still, it's still 8 picks. Yeah.
The last one against Louisville, he made it pretty clear. Look, there was a misstep with the receiver. That happens a lot, and he's still going to take the blame for it because it's on his stat sheet.
Right.
With that being stated, he's a veteran. This is who he is. And this is where I want to lead into something over the next 5-10 minutes of the show. I think he is the biggest reason that Miami got hosed on the ranking because he's not trending in the right direction. Everybody, whether they want to admit it or not, pays attention to quarterbacks, and they shouldn't. This is a pet peeve of mine. You got to look at the whole team. Football is the ultimate team sport. There is no way Miami shouldn't be ranked in the top 15 conservatively. I would have them around number 13 or so, right on the edge of the playoff. They're at 18, Alex.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And I get it. They should have beat SMU, but that's a quality team. They should have beat Louisville. That's arguably the best game day coach in college football.
Yes, who upsets top 5 teams every year.
It's amazing. Like, Brohm is legit. Like, if he was at Florida or Miami where he could just recruit, like, it'd be insane. Yeah. But he's at Louisville. Why do you think they put him all the way to 18? I have my own theory. I want to hear yours first, then I want to give mine.
I think, well, first of all, I'll default to what they said. Like the committee chair spoke and basically Miami losing 2 out of the last out of their last 3 games. The committee very much takes a, what have you done for me lately? And how are you trending approach? Like they don't just, and I think kind of as college football fans, we're sort of conditioned to the way like AP voters do things where they sort of look at the entire body of work. Like, hey, if you won a big game early in the season, that should maybe mean as much as, a game you win later in the season. That's not the way the College Football Playoff Committee looks at it. I think when you have a made-for-TV tournament like this, they are very much thinking of, hey, yeah, even though Miami may have beaten Notre Dame head-to-head the first week of the season, hypothetically, and I hate hypotheticals in sports because to me, the game is played on grass, not on a spreadsheet. Like I hate hypotheticals in sports. I thought Florida State should have gotten into the playoff a couple of years ago, but that's clearly not the way the committee approaches. The committee approaches it of how good do you look right now? And if we were to match you up against any of these teams, hypothetically, who would be favored, who should win. And so I just think, and you bring up Carson Beck trending in the wrong direction as part of it, because they do look at quarterbacks. It's very clear that when, Jordan Travis broke his leg 2 years ago, they couldn't put, in their minds, they couldn't put Florida State in for that reason. Carson Beck is playing bad ball. And yet Miami has not been good for the past 3 weeks or the past month of the season. So I think the committee looks at that where they even take it to really trump the head-to-head. And I can understand why Miami fans feel hard done by this because the committee has valued head-to-head for everyone else except for Miami. So they have Alabama ranked a spot ahead of Georgia, even though I would say Georgia has been a better team and the resume is better. Alabama lost by 2 touchdowns to Florida State, let's not forget. But they had to rank Alabama a spot in front of Georgia because Bama won a head-to-head. Right? I would argue Oklahoma at number 12 is a better football team, has a better resume than number 11 Texas, but they rank Texas a spot ahead of Oklahoma because of the head-to-head. But in the case of Miami and Notre Dame, the teams have identical records and actually very similar strength of schedule metrics overall. But they said, you know what, Notre Dame is way better right now, so we're going to rank them not just in front of Miami, which I guess I could understand it if they were a couple spots ahead, but 8 spots in front of Miami, which seems to be some hypocrisy based on the other ways they rank teams.
I agree. I'm going to give my take on that because I agree with Alex, but I'm going to add something to it. That is next here on this crossover of Locked On Canes and Locked On the Portal. Today's show is brought to you by the NBA and FanDuel because there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of an NBA game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Alex, thank you once again for joining me today for this fascinating discussion and my ability to yell at the College Football Playoff Committee, which is one of my favorite pastimes.
Same.
And I have a feeling that many fans, not just Miami fans, feel that way. I agree with you about the trending thing. That's one of the things on my notes. It's the top. What you do in the back 6 games is valued far higher than the first 6. Last year it was that way.
Yeah.
And it's the same because Notre Dame lost the terrible game in Northern Illinois last year. That means only one loss they had, but they won the rest of their games after that. They got, what was it? They were 6 seed or something like that, 7 seed, whatever. But that's totally the same pattern we're seeing here. Miami loses at the end. And by the way, they are 4-11 in their last 15 games under Cristobal in November. Not helpful. But
let me correct you with semantics. All right. 4-9 in November, but 4-11 after October, because if you include bowl losses. I just want to not that makes that much of a difference, but it is what it is.
They just, I don't understand it because Miami plays physical football and we both know their roster is legit. But anyway, I digress. I think TV, you hit it on the head. They want matchups. They're never going to admit to this in a million years. They want matchups that everybody will watch. Fans, especially women, they're going to watch passing a lot more than running football. It's that more exciting football. I think that's one of the reasons that once BYU loses, which they will this weekend, they're going to plummet. That's not a very exciting team. But looking at the numbers and everything here, Miami, they played a pretty decent schedule. They haven't shied away from any. They beat the bejesus out of Florida. They were competitive against everybody they played against. They haven't got crushed by anybody.
Yeah, that's right.
But they're all the way down to 18. I think it's just too much recency bias.
Yes, 100%.
That is my
and I would wonder if, and this is a big if, because I make no guarantees about Miami's next 4 games, but if Miami were to win their next 4 games, Syracuse comes to town this week, they're awful. Like you need to blow them out. Like you need to send the committee a message. 100%. NC State the following week could be a tricky game, but Miami's at home and they do have more talent. NC State's been a Jekyll and Hyde team. They're capable of beating Georgia Tech apparently, but they're also capable of losing to anybody. Miami plays a not very good Virginia Tech team, but they are still fighting on the road the following week. And then Pittsburgh is ranked right now. They're top 25, 24th in the CFP. That's going to be a big opportunity and a difficult game for Miami on the road. So I'm wondering if Miami can change that recency bias and make it work in their favor if they do win those final 4 games.
I know nobody's going to give them the credit. The Virginia Tech game is the one that I find most intriguing because you have no idea what you're going to get from Virginia Tech. They don't have their head coach. They've been up and down since the head coach.
Yeah.
They better come out and be ready for that game. It'll be cold. It's November 22nd. But if they go out and win 31-10, it gives you a chance when you go to Pittsburgh the next week, another cold game. You got to beat the bejesus out of Virginia Tech if you want to make the playoff.
Yeah.
That's my take. As it relates to my other thoughts here, just looking at the numbers, they're a good defense. But I have a question for you. Watching Ruben, he's a guy I know, he's a guy I like. Does he look the same to you right now as he did in the first month of the season?
Here's the thing. I think with Bain, it has really been a lot of successful scheming him out of games by opponents. I think, and Jeff Brohm, I think, set the blueprint of get rid of the football quickly, roll out in the other direction, throw the football in 2.5 seconds or less. Because the thing about Bain is, and it's crazy, I know he's not getting the sacks, but he's in the backfield on virtually every play. Like if you go by all the Pro Football Focus metrics, and I know, again, fans want to see, hey, how come he doesn't have 11, 12 sacks at this point? But, he is leading the nation in pressures, and I think he's leading the nation in overall pass rushing grade. So, his production has been there, But I will give credit, I guess, to the opposing coaches recently, from Jeff Brohm to even to Frank Reich. I mean, Miami got sacks in that game, and it was usually the guy playing opposite of Ruben Bain in the Stanford game, and Rhett Lashley really doing a good job kind of scheming his sacks out of it. So, I think statistically he's been the same guy. So it's hard for me to say that Ruben himself has taken a dip.
I think that he is schemed against, and the Louisville game was arguably the best scheme I've seen against the D-line in years.
Yeah,
Because their
Brohm
offensive
absolutely
line
like that was one of the best coached games I think all season in the country, not just in the ACC. Brohm did an incredible job.
100%. You could say that for several years because they cut
Yeah.
block on short passes. They made Miami's
Yeah.
players up front not want to be aggressive. They made them
Yeah.
think, which is a major advantage. To that end, what do you think they have to do, especially this week against Syracuse, to kind of get back on track offensively? Let's switch it. I'm going to see if you say what I'm thinking in my head right now. What do they have to change on offense to get rolling?
Well, I mean, first things first, I would expect this to be the type of game going up against really a Syracuse defense that's bad in every way, shape, or form. There should be running lanes this week. Now, this is going to have to probably happen without Mark Fletcher because Fletcher is likely to miss this game with injury. So there's going to be a bigger workload for Marty Brown, who probably needs to get his yards per carry up a little bit, and for Jordan Lyle, who's been kind of reintegrated the last couple of weeks coming off an injury. Lyle is their most explosive guy, so an opportunity to find some running lanes on the outside is maybe something that he can provide. And I really, to me, attacking downfield is really, really important, and hopefully he can run to set up the play action game. Miami will be definitely without C.J. Daniels, one of their top receivers in this game. JoJo Trader stepped in and started for CJ last week, made some really good plays against SMU, also had a really tough play, the bobbled ball that went for an interception. But I think JoJo Trader can play a role this week. And then, of course, Malachi Toney is going to play a role every single week. He's been the focal point of Miami's offense. So this has got to be the get-right game, Brian, for Carson Beck, because this is statistically right now, this is one of the worst defenses you're going to face all year. And you talk about teams that are trending in the wrong direction. 5 weeks ago, Syracuse was really good. Fran Brown, and this is taking nothing away from Fran. I think he's a heck of a football coach because a lot of the stuff that's going wrong there is not necessarily in his control. But losing Steve Angeli there has it has magnified every other problem that they have on that roster. And they had problems defensively before Angeli went down. So I look at this as a slump buster type of game, a potential get-right game for all facets of Miami's offense, including Carson Beck.
I think it's got 38-7. Basically, it'll be the repeat of the Stanford game is kind of what I think. But here's my question. Yeah. When is the next running play for Miami going to happen that's not inside duo?
2028. Your guess is as good as mine. I think, but again, if you want to mix in some outside stuff, I think this is a week to do it because, again, Syracuse has been so bad against all forms of a rushing attack, especially when you don't he'll be questionable. Mark Fletcher, if he's not available, who, of course, is a bull in a china shop when he's running inside, if you're relying more on a guy like Jordan Lyle, maybe this is the week. If not this week, maybe sometime before 2028.
I've never seen a team run one play.
Yeah.
Never. And maybe I'm missing a few here and there, and it's a little bit, but honestly, I don't think so. They don't even run GT. Everybody runs GT.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't understand it. It's so wild because that offensive line is massive. It's talented. It's got players that play together. They should be doing better. They've slowly went down, especially in those short yardage spots. Look at the SMU game. They knew what was coming, so they just shot gaps. Yeah. You've got to have a little bit of creativity. I saw your post on X, and it was spot on. We need to see some change here. You were 100% correct. And if they do that, they should win their remaining 4 games. If they stay this current course and don't make any changes, I don't know which one it'll be. Miami's going to lose that game. That's my
and you were asking me off air, and I'll take the opportunity to answer on air. I'm not saying my explanation is the right one, but you were asking me why does this team fade in November? Like, how are they, so good early in the season and then the margins thin so much? I think first things first, Brian, I would say the offensive approach and just the lack of variety. When you're running these same plays in September, and teams don't have a lot of film on you, then you're automatically going to find more success. But I think when you don't evolve and vary enough, by the time Halloween rolls around, everybody knows your tendencies and everybody can scheme against them. And I think Miami's approach is too often playing to your personnel to the point where, there's no question, Miami's got a more physical team than anyone in the ACC, more physical than most in the country, big offensive line, powerful defensive line. We're just going to lean on these guys and play bully ball. And that works great in September, but it doesn't work the same way when your tendencies and your film is out there in November. So that's one thing. And I feel strongly about that being one of the reasons why the November success does not equal the September success. Another thing, and it's just a theory because, practices are closed after training camp. Like, nobody outside of, former players and VIPs are watching practices during the season. But I wonder if this team, if they practice so hard that you get physically taxed by the time you get to the late season, that maybe you're practicing hard, but you're not practicing smart. And I might be wrong about that because, again, I'm not watching these practices, just so everybody knows. This is just a theory. But I wonder if, like, physically you're worn out at this point of the season because you're not tapering off enough. It's a question I have.
Well, I think that is certainly a possibility. Like, certain teams look more tired at the end of the year. So I think that's valid. To that point, we're going to discuss the transfer portal. Miami did a very good job in the portal season leading up to this year. Which players need to step up next for Miami to get back on track? That is next here on this crossover edition. We're going to be talking about Supply House because they are our other sponsor today. When you are going into the opening whistle and you got a new repair to fix, you got to get your crew moving and you got to do it with Supply House. Order today and see parts come in on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. The real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting on projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. If you need something done right away, they will even send something to you next day. They've got 3D schematics to help you find exactly what you're looking for and get stuff done efficiently. Join the free Trade Master program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people and real service. All right, Alex, which players did the Canes bring in? Obviously, Carson Beck's the low-hanging fruit answer here. He's got to play better. But who else needs to step up for them to win their last four and to get into that conversation when the last playoff committee ranking comes out?
All right, so transfers that I want to see more from Keelan Marion at receiver, he's had some good moments. I feel like him not having a kickoff return touchdown yet, as much as I've wanted to see one. Obviously it's probably had something to do with a lot of touchbacks and stuff happening this year. He hasn't had a whole lot of opportunities to return kicks, but more consistency in the receiving game because he's been a starter, I think, every game this year at receiver. The production's been a little bit spotty, a little bit hit or miss. And obviously it's where the quarterback is throwing the football. But I think Keelan Marion, who's been a starting receiver, the transfer from BYU, we would like to see more from here on out. I think Marty Brown, who's been excellent at times. I mean, he was probably Miami's offensive MVP in the Florida win, for example, the running back transfer from North Dakota State. He's been playing behind Mark Fletcher, understandably. So Fletcher's gotten most of the work. Brown had an unfortunate cut in short yardage that led to a play being stuffed last week. But I know what he's capable of. And I would imagine Marty Brown is probably going to be Miami's starting running back this week against Syracuse and for however long Mark Fletcher may be out for. So that's someone I think has an opportunity to step up. Defensively, linebacker Mo Torre, transfer from Rutgers, is going to be really, really important. Obviously Miami's defense overall has been good enough. Like Miami's D they are not the reason why this team has lost 2 games. It's the offense. It's the reverse from last year. Last year, the offense was fantastic and the defense was not good. This year, the defense has been fantastic and the offense hasn't been good enough. But I look at a guy like Mo Torre as being, incredibly important to step up. And then, there are certain transfers, Brian, who have played really well all season long. I would argue the best has been Keontae Scott, the transfer defensive back from Auburn. He's in a handful of Miami's games, he's been their best defensive player. I think he has been consistently awesome this year. And then, CJ Daniels at wide receiver, who's not going to play this week and maybe not for a couple of weeks. He's been consistently really good. I guess another guy that I'd like to see more from is Alex Bauman, the tight end transfer from Tulane. He did get a touchdown. He scored a touchdown reception against SMU. But Miami's tight end rooms hasn't been good this year. Elijah Lofton, not a transfer, but he's been a disappointment this year. He's not played up to the potential we thought he had. Bauman's been kind of hit or miss. This team really misses a couple of the tight ends that they lost from last year. I wish Riley Williams was still at Miami. He was homesick, so he transferred to Oregon State, who's obviously not a good team. I wish he was still on the roster. He wanted to be back home in the Pacific Northwest, and that was an unfortunate thing for Miami. And so, this is a team that they really hit some home runs, Brian, in the transfer portal. Xavier Lucas has overall been really good this year in the defensive backfield, but and you let it off with Carson Beck, who's so obvious. I mean, he is the transfer. That's the guy who holds the keys to how well this team can finish over their next 4 games.
I agree with all of that. And let me throw in one more. I know we kind of picked on them with running duo over and over, and that still holds true. Brockermeyer is a guy that's a good player.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought him up. He's been struggling. Yeah.
He's not the biggest cat in the world. I think he's better in a zone kind of scheme.
Yeah.
Miami doesn't run that. Now, he's smart. He's seen about everything. He started his career at Bama, went to TCU, now he's in Miami. He's seen everything. But he's not a power guy like Inez is, or definitely not Big Maui. I think that's one of the reasons that they're not running the ball as well in short yardage. He's the one guy that he's 295, 300, give or take. That's something I'm curious about. It would behoove Miami to help him by running some inside zone of some kind. There's different variations, midline, inside, stretch, there's all kinds. But that inside duo play that they use is not made for him. I'm curious to see if Miami switches that up, because that, like you said, that's, we're going to lean on you.
Yeah. You might need to either switch that up or switch the center up, because I think one of those things has to happen. You either switch centers, because Miami does have other options, or you switch the scheme to benefit Brockermeyer.
Yeah, he's a good player, but I just don't think it's going to behoove him to play that style. No. Last point here, Miami's 18th. Where do you think they will be if they win the next 2 games? They're convincing. Do you think they can at least get inside the top 15 pretty quick? Because if they do, there's a chance. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think even, and Syracuse, again, Miami can feel free to prove me wrong on this. I hope they don't. But I think Syracuse is a guaranteed win, right? It's just, I think it's a matter of how dominant you look. I think if Miami looks dominant this week, and if, a couple of teams that are in the top 15 maybe lose this weekend, I think Miami could maybe climb into the top 16 after this weekend. And then, maybe if you beat NC State the following week, maybe you can get into the top. So I think getting into the top 15, if you win your next 2 games, is very doable, right? So I guess my concern would be over the course of the next month, are enough teams in front of you going to cannibalize each other where even if you win out, you can get into the top 12? Because we also have to remember there are 5 automatic bids that go to conference champions. So you're talking about 7 at-large spots, and the committee is obviously going to favor SEC teams at-large spots before they do any favors to the ACC. Probably the same said for the Big Ten. So, realistically, out of 7 at-large spots, you're probably fighting for maybe 1 of 2 potential final spots. So the margin for error is 0. If Miami does win out, I think they're going to be in a similar situation, Brian, to where they were a year ago, where you're kind of praying for a miracle with the final, committee decision, and Miami was, about 2 spots outside of it last year. So but I think to answer your question, I think win the next 2 games, and I think you could climb into the top 15.
I think that's a plausible final scenario there. We'll leave it there. Alex, I appreciate you coming in and chatting it up with me. Tell everybody where they can find your work.
Well, you do an awesome job. Thank you so much. And yeah, you can find my work on Locked On Canes, talking Miami football and hoops now. Congrats to Jay Lucas on his first win. We talk Miami sports on Locked On Canes every single day. And I also talk ACC sports with Kenton Gibbs on Locked On ACC every single day, available free wherever you get your podcasts.
Appreciate it. You can find the Portal Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, you name it. You can find it there just like you can on Alex with Locked On Canes. This has been a crossover, Locked On Canes and Locked On the Portal.